I assume from the conversation I was looking at my phone while I was not driving, was just say that it sounds like maybe bringing Rod in and having you explain who you are really might work
Right.
better. But I don't know if you guys already discussed that.
Yeah, we already talked about how we just want to have a
All right,
regular conversation. Like we
got it.
think in real time, we think in public, and so this is
I
where it's
like it.
at.
This is a daughter podcast where dads come to talk, think, and thrive with your hosts, Oscar and Blandon. Our mission is to cultivate a community of strong, mindful, and present fathers.
We want to curate honest conversations with all men, but especially those who have the honor of raising daughters.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Daughter Podcast. I'm Oscar here, not in my normal side, traveling a little bit. We'll discuss that as we go. Blandon is on his normal side over in Houston. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing outstanding. Again, another lovely Sunday. This weekend, I am single dadding it a little bit, a lot actually. My wife is on a business trip, and so me and the girls are spending some quality time, and we had a great Sunday together. So we did all the things, we ran around, we ate, we played. Now I am ready for this guest co-host, I want
Yeah.
to say, because
Oh
I
yeah.
don't want to call it an interview because we've already talked and we've gotten to know each other. So I just want to invite him in. He is another multi-talented, multi-hyphenate guest that we have here, a father that wears so many hats: coach, motivator, podcaster, entrepreneur. I could just go on and on, but I'm going to let our guest co-host, Mr. Rod Richard, introduce himself. Hey
All
Rod, how you
right.
Yeah,
doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm flattered that I got so many hyphens just now. Look, I'm just a willing vessel, right?
There you go.
I'm trying to do a little bit of everything with a little bit of time that I got that I'm blessed with, and so yeah, I do coach. I have a business. I work with students. I work with athletes. I work with fathers. Most importantly, though, I'm a husband and a father.
There
And
we go.
so, those are my two main hyphens, right? Like those are the ones that matter most to me. Everything else is just playing the background to those two things.
I think I missed also one hyphen on there, Rod, and it's one that we actually both share, and that is pop hunter, pop collector, right? Look at his pop collection back there. I'm
Yeah.
impressed, bro. I have mine set up in the other room. My wife won't let me have it out in front of company because, I mean, it's not your regular decor. But yeah, me and Rod, we're talking offline. We both have extensive pop collections. We've been hunting for a while, haven't we, sir?
Yes, yes, yeah. And this is just some of them. This is what looks good aesthetically in here. Because originally they were all like the whole wall, right? But then I had to
Right.
soundproof it, so I was like, I got to sacrifice some people.
Yeah,
Y'all got to go. So
exactly.
it's there's a box that has them in there because like my wife was like, those are not going in my living room. Like, what are you thinking right now? Like,
And I'm like, do you understand how much some of these are worth? They deserve to be in the living room. Like it deserves to be out in public. I
I
probably
gotta ask though, who did you have to sacrifice? You might bury yourself on this one.
Oh man, you know what? I'm not even. I can't even think about who it is right now or what it was that I put away. I know I put away some of the more valuable ones because my
absolutely.
daughters come in here and mess around a little bit,
Yeah.
and they are not as careful when they come in because like you can. My head is pretty close to the ceiling, right? So it's not a big room. So when they come in here, it's elbows and like they're all over the place. So I had to put away some of the more coveted ones,
There
All
we
and then
right.
go.
these are just like when I'm in here by myself, I turn around and like just funny ones like Florida Stanley from The Office.
Yeah.
That gets me every time. Reminds me of a good episode. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't collect. What you guys call them, pops?
Yes. Funko
Yes.
Pops. Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
But we do have all three of us something in common, and that's being daughtered.
That's right.
And
That's right.
so I'm gonna stick to that because although I do like those, I do not collect those, and I don't know what the price tag is either. So, but I
Listen,
have heard those prices go up pretty quick.
Yes.
they're
Yes.
still cheaper than daughters though, so don't collect too many of
Oh,
those daughters either.
I won't argue that point, my friend. So tell us, Rod, you have two daughters. One
Mhm.
of them's 11, if I'm not mistaken.
She just turned 12. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, but yeah,
okay.
she like
Welcome to the
Thursday,
club, my
Thursday.
friend. Welcome to the club.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
your youngest is
9. Yeah, she's 9
okay.
for another couple of months.
And how's that been?
Oh man, it is amazing. I will say. I don't say that lightly. I'm not saying that because we're on a podcast about being daughtered or because we're fathers. And I'm not saying that because I think they're going to listen and be mad at me if I don't say otherwise. I mean it when I say it. Like my daughters are my purpose, and so everything about it, the good and the bad, I totally am appreciative of, because they have helped me become the man that I am today and am still becoming. And so it's been a really amazing journey so far.
Very cool. When were you first daughtered?
My oldest daughter was born in August of 2012, but I would say I didn't know it was a girl at the time, but I would
Okay.
say I
Okay.
was officially daughtered the moment I found out I was going to be a father. I was
Okay.
just so happened to be blessed later on to find out it was going to be a daughter, but the day that I found out that I was going to be a father, like people say, it changed my life. Like it literally changed my life.
Yeah.
Like it changed my whole trajectory of all that I thought that I was going to be, and kind of turned it into, like I said, what I've become.
It's an amazing thing that a little creature can do all of that in one moment.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I, we went out to a friend's birthday party last night, and on the way home, we're just having conversation because we get time together. It's what we do. We just talk, and we were talking about how our daughter made us both better husband and wife. Like,
Yeah.
because we had been together, well, we've been together 26 years at this point. But at the time that we had my daughter, we had, I guess it was like maybe, I don't know, 10 years or so, 11 years. Uh, that math doesn't make any sense. So I don't know how long it was. I was just trying to do the math in my head. We had been together a long time up until
Yeah.
that point, right? And you think that you're good, you know what I mean? You think you're doing a good job. You think, oh, that's my good husband, and you think she thinks she's a good wife. And then when we found out we're gonna have a baby, and then when the baby actually gets here, I gotta step it up. Like I gotta.
Yeah.
There's some. There's like a whole nother level of this thing
Yes.
that I didn't even know I was capable of being, or even could aspire to be. Right? Like
Yeah.
I didn't. There was so much that I didn't know that I didn't know, and having my daughter open my eyes to the possibilities of the man that I could be. I was kind of content where I was, like my career. I was doing really well. I'm a strength and conditioning coach, and at the time when I found out, I was working with the New York Mets. So I was like 27 when I got the job. I'm working a professional team at the age of 27. I hit the jackpot, right? Like I'm the
Yeah.
pinnacle of strength and conditioning. I'm working with a major league team. I'm getting to travel, all these celebrities and all these guys that I had kind of like admired and looked up to, where I'm rubbing elbows with them. Like I actually get to see them. But then when I found out I was gonna be a father, like none of that mattered at all. I didn't care about any of it. Like it was just like, nah, I'm gonna go be dad. Like I don't care about the planes, and I'm cool. I'm gonna be dad, and that's
Yeah.
literally what happened. It's like I gave all that up and came back home and was like, I'm locking in on this because this is what's most important to me.
That's incredible, man. And I think a lot of people don't realize that fatherhood is one of those things that is experiential, but it's like milestone. You see the trajectory of where you were pre-fatherhood, and then you see it post-fatherhood, and then you see it post that second child, and it's something that you really of you're evolving in it. And so when
Yeah,
you look back on where you have come from, it's startling because you're like, that was a different life. That was a
yeah,
completely different person before 2 kids, a wife, a house, dogs, and then the life that you've built together. And I don't think we really sit back and process that enough because we're just going. You're going through the motions. Me and Oscar were talking about it the other day. You're just trying to keep the kid alive. You're trying to keep your marriage alive. You're trying to go and work your job. That's awesome the way that you would say, yeah, at this point, I'm all in on this. I'm focused in on this. And that's the huge change that you had. That's great.
I think for me too, and piggybacking off of what you said, is that I think for me at that time, these conversations weren't happening. And I know like my dad was in my life and was in my, there was a period of time when I was younger when he wasn't, and him and my mom were going through their thing. But he managed to get back in and be very involved. But we never had a fatherhood conversation. He never told me about like his journey in fatherhood and what that was going to be like when I became a father. He taught me about being a man, and he talked to me about the birds and the bees and women and all that kind of stuff. But he never, when you're a father, you're going to feel like this, and when your kid is this age, this is going to happen, and you're going to want, like, you never have those conversations, right? And so it wasn't even a, not that it wasn't a reality, because I knew fathers existed, obviously, and I knew that I was
Right.
going to be one, but I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that I was gonna have a kid, and like, people, you'll figure it out. You're never, you're never gonna be ready. You just get ready when, like, all the stuff that they tell you. And I was just embraced. All right, I'm just gonna figure it out. It's like throwing somebody in the ocean and saying, "Hey, you'll learn how to swim." Like,
Right. Right.
When I think one of the things that I like about your platform and what you're doing is allowing not just conversation, because you have your pillars going on. We'll talk about those. But as Glenn and I were talking this week, it, one, I agree with you 100%. My father never had the, hey, you're going to be a father one day, and this is the things you're going to go through. And, I have a sister. So there was never like, if you have a girl, this will happen. If you have a boy, this will. It was never like that. It was almost, uh, at times it was almost like, oh, you just wait and see, or you'll
Mm.
see when you have a kid, you'll understand this thing. When you have a kid, you'll understand this thing. But it didn't feel like a lesson. It felt like almost like a curse. Like, oh, like well, I don't want to have kids
Yeah.
because you know what I mean.
yeah,
Um, so that was one thing. So yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. The other thing though is what you mentioned is that not taking the time, and I'm 100% guilty of this. We just talked about this week. Not taking the time to sit for a second and actually appreciate what it is that we're about to embark in.
Yeah.
Because my mind, again, maybe because we didn't have the conversation, maybe because these conversations were happening as I was growing up as a father, but my mind was providing. What do they need? What do I need to do to be better at my work? Because if I'm better at work, I'm gonna get more money. If I get more money, that helps my family. Like, it was like these like very, and I've mentioned this before in the podcast, like these very segmented checklist items. Like, I gotta check off these things because that's what I know I'm supposed to do. But until we had Shane Burgos on with us, and he said it simply, I'm proud of the dad I've become. And until that point, I had never even sat and looked back and said, I actually have become a better father. Three deep now, right? Like, I've done things that have made me better. I think what your platform is doing in having the pillars and having these conversations is allowing that time to create retrospection so that we can sit there and be like, oh man, yeah, like Landon said, we were completely different people.
Yes.
And now, if you truly sit back and just stare at one of your kids, you're like, who am I right now? Like, how did this? And it's not a bad thing, not in a
Right.
negative. I
No,
mean, I
yeah.
guess
Yeah.
you could take that negatively too, but in a positive way. And I did this week after Glenn and I talked. It was just sitting there staring at one of my daughters, my middle girl, and just looking at her and like she's not only alive, she's thriving, she's doing these things, and I'm like, who did that for you? It's not me. You know what I mean?
uh huh. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean, and I think that's one of the things, or a couple of things from what you said, right? Is I think the one thing that we have all learned as men is that when you become a father or a husband and you take on that leadership role, is that you have to provide. I think that's like, no matter who you are, that's what you've heard your whole life. It's like, a man provides. And I actually posted something about this the other day, from Breaking Bad, right? And it's like, what is a man? A man provides. And we hear that all the time. And so we do it. And that's the one thing we can take
Yeah,
solace in,
yeah,
because we don't know what the heck else to do. So I'm just going to provide, and I'm going to go work. And then when I go work, if I do a good job, they reward me. So I work more because I feel really good about that. And if I make more money, then I give to my family. Like, I'm doing that really, really well. And so we generally lock in on that because that's the one thing we feel comforted in, because that's the one thing we understand. But there's so many other parts to it. There's so many other things that are important when you become a father, when you become the leader of a household. But that's the one thing I think, because we don't have enough of these conversations that we lock in on. And so I try to, as much as I can, because I'm not going to tell you not to provide, because that is your responsibility.
Yeah,
You are
absolutely.
going to have to be a provider, but provision is not always monetary. Provision is also emotional. Provision is also your leadership. Provision is also your presence. Being able to provide stability is also important. Being able to provide emotional support, being able to provide lessons or knowledge. Like, there's all these other things that go into provision, but we lock in on the dollar amount. And I think that's kind of the shortcoming of not having conversations like these. The other thing is, when you realize that you're more than providing, just as the man in the house, you're more than providing, and you sit down on it and you're retrospective and you're like, hey, I just, I came into this thing and I was just gonna get a good job with some good benefits, and I was going,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I was gonna retire, and then next thing you know, you're like, dang, I had a good cry with my kid earlier, and
Right.
she had a meltdown, and I got down on the floor, and like we had a conversation. Like, this ain't what I didn't know I was gonna be that guy. I thought I
Yeah.
was gonna be the, because I said so, do as I say. I thought that's the type of person I was gonna be. And immediately when I became daughter, I was like, I gotta be so much more than that.
Yeah.
Like, I have to be more than that, like, because I'm the only guy in the house.
Yeah.
I've got to expand, man. I've got to grow into these other versions of myself, these other possibilities. Like, it's not in some off universe or like another dimension. Like, I'm in real time having to be other versions of myself in order to be all of myself for them.
Yeah.
And it took for me to have my daughter to realize that, and that in itself helped, like I said, helped in my marriage, because as far as emotions go, let my wife tell it. And she used to say this to me in high school, and I thought it was funny. She was like, I don't have emotions. Like, you're either happy or you're mad, and that's it. And I lived like that for a really long time
Right.
Mm,
until I had my daughter. And it was like, I can't just be happy and mad. Like, I've got to have something else. And
yeah, yeah.
it's just been amazing.
Speaking of that something else, man, I like the fact that you have boiled down your values to these four. So even though your wife birthed your children for you, but you birthed this business, right? This community, this forfeit
Mhm,
fatherhood is yours.
mhm,
And you have these four pillars: faith, family, fitness, finance. All of those are important, I think, for men. And being able to balance yourself and mature in all of those is extremely important. But my question for you, tell us which one you think is the most important, because I know which one is the most important for me in those four.
mhm. Can I would do two things. I'll tell you how I got to those four, and
Yeah.
then I'll tell you which one I think is the most important.
Okay.
And and
Got
I-
you.
and I'll also say it also depends on where you are in your life.
Uh
Like,
oh. Uh
but
oh. Uh
I'll,
oh.
I'll tell
Okay.
you. So I got to those four because men, listen, no disrespect to the complicated brothers out there, but we are very simple. And as I was like kind of working through stuff, it was like, all right, these ten, and you gotta try to find something catchy, like the 10 facts of 10 things. Like, dude, 10 was too many. 7 was still too many. I'm like, bro, I need like, okay, one, two, three. If it gets more than the number of fingers I got on one hand, I'm gonna forget one of them. So I need four things that I can really focus on that are gonna make a difference in my life.
Mm,
Is, am I aligned spiritually? So is my faith aligned, right? Am I taking care of business in that regard? Because I am the spiritual leader of my family. So is my faith in line? Am I aligned with my creator in the way that I need to be, so that I can pass that on to my children? Fitness. I'm obviously a strength and conditioning coach, so fitness fits in there anyway. But I love being a father, and the only way for me to be a father for longer is to take care of my health. I've always said, even before I had kids, I've always wanted to be like the old grandfather at the Christmas party with the big chair and all the little kids around me, and I'm telling them lies about how I used to walk uphill in the snow 5 miles. You know what I mean? Like, I've always seen that as like somewhere down the line, the end of my life. And the only way for me to get there is if I take care of my health. Because
Yeah.
if I don't, I'm gonna be 50 and be gone, and then my kids are gonna mourn me, as opposed to like their grandkids and their, you know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? So like, fitness is extremely important. Family, your father, family's got to be important to you. I think that's a no-brainer in there. And then finances, these kids are expensive, man. Like, it's just, they're expensive. Not only are they expensive, but the long-term look at it is, if I'm not financially savvy, If I lack financial literacy, then they are too, because they're
Yeah.
gonna get their money. They're gonna get their money habits from me. Like I got my money habits from my parents. My dad is very, very responsible with money. My mom is not so much, because they split up and I lived with my mom. When I got on my own, I was not very responsible with money. Like I had no real concept of how to handle money the way that I should, and I had to learn the hard way. So I don't want that for my kids. And so for me, I have to be financially savvy. And along the way, I need to teach them those lessons. So as I'm learning, they're learning, right? Like they have their own, accounts and all that stuff, because I want them to learn. I'm teaching them the right ways. And I think that's really important. Um, so now that I've got those four things, if I focus on those four things and make sure that they are all aligned, and they understand, as my family, these four things as well, we can all kind of get on the same page. What's most important is the first one. It is my faith, because that's going to my steps are guided, right? I am who I am. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and but I know everybody has different religions, right? Everybody has different beliefs, and I'm not here to push you in one way or the other. I can only live the way that I live and hope that it is a shining light to someone. I'm not a missionary. I'm not an apostle. I am just a man who's trying to live in alignment with the beliefs that he believes. But I think that really guides how you lead your family. Your spiritual beliefs, your morals, your values are all in the same vein. And so, in order for me to be the man that I need to be for my family, it's going to come from that, right? Like if I didn't have those set of beliefs, then I would parent them a different way, or maybe I'd be different in my wife, or I would be different in my family. But I think that leads the way for me. I think it's the most important. Now, the reason I say it depends on where you are in your life is because at different moments, different things are going to be more important. If you're struggling financially, your finances might be a little bit more important at that time. Now that the others aren't important, but
Yeah.
if you don't get your finances together, your family's going to struggle,
Okay.
right? If you don't get your finances together, you ain't gonna make it to church on Sunday because you got to go work overtime.
Right.
So your faith starts to slip, right? Or if you go to the doctor and you say, "Hey, man, you got 6 months." You don't get it right in 6 months. You know what I'm saying? So now your fitness, that's number one. Like, because if I don't get it right in 6 months, I'm not gonna be with my family. Dang sure ain't gonna be making no money.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Well, my faith might be better because I'm gonna go see my maker. Like, you know what I'm saying? So you got to make sure like you're looking at those things, and depending on where you are is going to shift the importance, but I think they're all really important. For me, it's I'm always going to lean on the faith part of it, because that's the center of my life. And then everything kind of vibrates out from there.
I completely agree with you, as the faith being the most important, because I think it informs every single part of your life. It informs how you spend your money. It informs like how you see your body, and it
Yep.
also informs how you treat your family. From my faith as well as yours as a Christian, I understand that I'm called to be a primary sacrifice for my family. I am to love my wife in a way that is sacrificial love, and my children in that way. And so if I didn't have my faith, I wouldn't even think that way. I wouldn't even think of loving her that way or think of loving them that way. And understanding those major themes about fatherhood and family, I'm informed by my faith in that way. The one thing I probably will disagree with you about is you saying to yourself that you're not like a missionary, because you have this huge platform and that you are on mission. And I would say being on mission is informing and training and coaching these guys and understanding how important faith is, and their family and their finance and their fitness. So you have a call, brother. So you just go ahead and walk in it, man.
That's one of the hyphens I may not be ready for yet. Um, like I said, I'm gonna be a willing vessel. I'm gonna
There
continue
you
to
go.
wake up today
There you go.
and hit my knees first and say my prayers and let God lead my steps. But
Hey, that's important. That's an important example for your girls and then the other men in your community. That's super important. That's amazing. And it is, in this day and age, somewhat controversial, even
Mhm.
though it really shouldn't be, but for whatever reason it is, but it's highly respected for me. And I think anyone who is serious about any one of their faiths, for me, is respectable. Now, I might not agree with methodology, and I might not agree with how someone practices their faith. But if they're serious about it, I do respect it. Yeah.
Same. That's why I started it off that way, right? It's like, I understand that it may be a cultural situation, maybe where you're from in the world, like that just is what is natural for you. And so,
Right.
um, if I believe that my God is omnipotent, omnipresent, all knowing, all seeing, then at some point at the end of the day, my God is your God. You know what I'm saying? Like, my God is all powerful and he's the only God, even though you call your God something else, you got the same God. You know what I'm saying? Like, you call, like, I call my dad, my sister calls him daddy sometimes, but he's still, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's still
He's
the
the only
same
one,
thing.
right. That's the
It
major
just
message
depends.
is he's it.
Yeah, it just depends
It's
on where
it's
you're
a
at.
hard stop here, right. It's a hard stop with this. No,
Right.
I completely
I think though
agree.
that there's an important note here, right? So you can come in and have a platform and say, "I'm just gonna teach you how to be a father through faith." Now,
Hmm.
we know that that's first, right? In my experience, I see a lot of times, well, even in our current environment, the whole faith thing can be really just polarizing for many
Yeah.
people for some weird reason. That's like the big thing they want to put their foot on. Okay, whatever, right? Or on the other side, so that we're what I'm getting at is with the middle, right? But on the other side, sometimes is just faith, and that's to say, God will provide. I'm just gonna
Mhm.
sit here. God will provide. Like, well, that's not really how it works. First of all, he's
Right.
not a genie. That's not how this works. And
Right,
so I think that by you starting there and moving into the other pillars with
right.
that in the beginning, you're saying, yes, put your faith, put your worries, put your everything in God, but also He gave you all the abilities to do these things. Therefore, you must do these things,
Yeah, yeah,
right? If you can, then you must do. Like that's just how we should be seen in my eyes as fathers. You
yeah.
can't just I had a friend a while ago that was similar to that, right? Like, hey, we have this thing coming up. Are you ready? No, but God will help me. Like, what do you mean? Like,
Right.
don't get me wrong, there's miracles all over the place, but I don't think God's worried about this particular thing to be a miracle because you should probably work yourself to do these things. So that's what I'm getting at, right? So there's just like this very left side of like, you know, faith only, God will provide, uh, and I don't have to do anything. And then there's this other side that people just don't even want to touch the faith. But what I see in your pillars is, hey, we start here because, as you mentioned, Blandon,
Yes,
and you're absolutely right. The, this is my guiding path
absolutely.
into all the other things that I have to get done. As long as I stay within this guiding path, you know, my girls will see that. People around me will see that. I
Yes,
uh, I agree with you, Rod, in the sense that I don't feel worthy of going and being I think you said a missionary, right? But I do hope that through my actions, people know that I am a believer of Christ, and through my actions, that then they will see that. And
Right.
so, and that can be taken in many different ways for many people, and I'm sure you both can agree it's a work in progress. Like
yeah.
there's
Hmm.
right. I mean, I mean, I have the signs on my back, like, "Hey, work in progress. Sorry for the mess," or whatever that sign says, right? But I think
Not
it's
sorry for
important.
the mess. Come on.
You see what I mean? I mean, I think it's important that you
It is.
start there, but then you also follow on with, "Hey, by the way, you have to make yourself fit."
Hmm.
You don't just sit there
Absolutely.
and wish it to come true. You have to get your finances in line. Like that doesn't just happen,
Right,
and you
right.
have to lead your family,
Yes,
right?
Yep.
yes, yes.
Yeah. So it's a couple things, and I don't want. I'm gonna hit you with a couple quotes, I guess. So faith without works is dead. The Bible tells you that. So if we're on that side where faith is all, it's just faith, then you probably need to read that, just that line, right? Just that line. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. Like I'm faith is everything, but faith without works is dead. So you got to get to work. Something my dad used to tell me is when I was still playing football and I had hopes of being somebody. He used to tell me, two things. One, you need to always do your best, and then let God do the rest. Right? Like whatever it is that you're trying to do, you're going to give 100% of your effort, and whatever else is needed, God is going to take care of the rest. And um, to believe like God is going to do it all, and then work like it's all on you.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you have that level of faith, right? And that's kind of one of the things that even to this day I tell my daughters is like, hey, look, we are going to work as hard as we possibly can, with the understanding that hard work is going to guarantee us absolutely nothing. At the end of the day, all that hard work can guarantee is that we gave our best, and we
Right.
can walk away from whatever scenario knowing that there was nothing else that we could do. And that's it. And believe God and trust God that something's going to work the way it's supposed to. And hey, if it doesn't work out, it wasn't supposed to. Like
Right.
that was your will. That wasn't God's will.
Right.
But you did everything that you could. Like you left it all on the field, and you should have no regrets at that point. And so that's why I say, like, I would say I'm in the middle too. You know, like I'm a big believer in all things God, right? My mother and my stepfather were both pastors, and when I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast before. When I was 12, I think I was in seventh grade or eighth grade. I don't know. I graduated school early, so I might have been in sixth grade. But we were in Oakland, and if you're familiar with Oakland at that time, we're in West Oakland, Acorn Village, which is not the nicest neighborhood. And my mom was doing like some little kind of community work. We go down there on a Saturday or a Sunday, and she was like, you know what? The next time we come out here, I want you to preach. I want you to get out there with a message. And so she tasked me with having to go out there to do it. And the message that I gave, or the thing that I spoke about, was faith. And ever since then, faith has been something that I've always like leaned on. My faith is all like, no matter what's happening, I know that God has a bigger plan, but at the same time, I'm gonna work for it, right? I'm gonna work because God gave me, like you said, the resources, the tools, the ability, the mind to do all these things. And gave them to me for a reason, not so I could wait on Him. Like, you know what I mean? Not so He's like, yeah, here's all the tools you need. Just hold on to them. I'll be back. Like, no, he's like, here, take these tools and get to work. I'm gonna come check on you and see if you're doing the right thing. If you're not, I'm gonna mess it up for you real quick and then let you get back to work. So yeah, I'm like I said, if faith is your thing and you're leaning only on faith, I'm not mad at you, but that's, there's some work to be done as well. And if you don't have any faith and you're only dependent on your work, well, you can expect to be disappointed at some time. And it just is what it is. Like, because you don't have any comfort of knowing that you have the support of something bigger than you. If you're leaving it all on your shoulders, then it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions about your program. Not trying to give away free game here, but just trying to get in the mindset. How receptive are men to the coaching process, as far as coaching through this kind of fatherhood planning, getting into their business kind of thing? Because Oscar is one of my friends, and he is tight-lipped, private lived. Like, it's amazing I can get him on camera and talk about this quite frequently. But a lot of men, a lot of my friends are very private, right?
Mhm.
And so even us having conversations like this always surprise me. They for whatever reason, they always come as a shock. So I can just imagine coaching total strangers and getting into their intimate business about how they feel about their health and fitness and their finances. Finances is just a taboo issue in general. And then faith and family. So how receptive are they? And then what obstacles do you overcome to get to the breakthroughs?
Yeah, you know what's funny those are like the things we're not supposed to talk about, like religion and politics and finance, right? Like always the things you're not supposed to talk about. And I think we've heard that enough and we've lived that enough that we are really guarded with those things, right? And as men, we're not supposed to be vulnerable because vulnerability is seen as a weakness. So we're really, really closed off to that. But I think what you find is once you've committed yourself to a process, guys are really, really open. And
Okay.
I would say I think 50 Cent might have coined it, and he's talking about Ja Rule. He's talking about you're a Pop Tart. You're soft in the middle. A lot of guys are really hard exteriors because we have to be, because the world doesn't allow us to be anything other than that. The world doesn't give us space to share those other parts of us. When we get in a circle like this, and we're on a Zoom call or we're in a one-to-one meeting, and guys are like dying to share something with somebody because they have no other they have no other outlets.
Yeah.
They have nowhere else where they can be vulnerable and honest. Like they have to. If somebody asks them what's going on, and like most guys say, "Oh, I'm good.
Right.
Everything's great." Like, I'm chilling, struggling big time. Like just barely keeping your head above water. Like just sucking for air. Like just trying to stay alive. And when you finally have an opportunity to share that with someone, I think that's the first breakthrough. It's like, oh man, I didn't even know I was really feeling that. Like I was just internalizing everything and just kind of like pushing it down, and just being grateful that I was able to get it out. Like that getting that monkey off your back is like that first breakthrough. It's just like, hey, I'm really struggling and I don't know what to do about it.
Mm.
You know, or just being able to say I need help.
Yeah.
Because how often other than when we need to move, or we got a piano or something that we got to, how often we at the gym and we want to max out, we don't really ever ask for help. Like I still struggle asking for help. You know what I mean? Like no, I got it. No, I promise you, I got it. I'm gonna figure it out. Like I'm gonna figure it out, guy. Yeah, no worries. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But being able to have somewhere where you can say, or someone where you can say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I need help. I think is probably the first breakthrough. And then after that, the loads get lighter. The situations may get heavier, but it gets easier to be like, yo, I'm struggling with this too, man. And you're not judging me. Oh, okay, yeah, oh yeah. Then this happened and that happened, and I'm like, whoa, slow down. Like,
Right.
we can only let's get one of these done at a time. But I think that is the first barrier. And I think when guys, decide that they're going to work with me or decide they're going to join a community, they've kind of already accepted that they need help.
Got it.
Even though they may be skeptical, right? And I'm not gonna say so guys will come in and be really skeptical because we should be like, we're just guarded, right? It's not our fault. We don't know. We don't know about y'all yet. Like I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna sit and watch this Zoom meeting, and I'm like, I don't know. Something wrong with
Right.
those guys.
Well, to be fair too, when you get that guy that's like forthcoming with everything, you instantly like that's suspect. Like what?
Yeah.
What's your deal, bro? Like, I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
being honest. Like, it just my walls go up. I'm like, I don't know if we can be friends. Like, I don't know
I
what's
don't
going
know
on.
that your
Yeah.
walls come down. That's what I'm saying.
My walls come down all the time.
Yeah,
They're
with
those
those
metal
little
walls.
girls.
The
Yeah, with
metal
those
like
little girls. Yeah, you let down the bridge over the moat, and you let them come in, and then they go back up.
I don't let it down. They just rush the castle, bro.
Yeah, here's the deal. Look, if we can give from, and I've said this before too, is like, listen, you're gonna have walls, or you're gonna have your barriers, because you should have your boundaries. But if I can get your boundary to go from a concrete brick wall to
Yeah.
a chain link fence where we can at least see in and you can see out,
Mm,
then we're making progress. Because you can keep that up. Like I get it. Your past trauma, because I'm not a therapist, right? So I'm not talking about
right.
necessarily
Right.
your past traumas and helping you solve that. That's somebody else. That's another professional, right? But if you can at least allow airflow back and forth, or conversation back and forth about what's happening with you, then we can help. But as long as that wall is solid, you're on your own, brother. Like
Yeah.
when something happens, no one can even see to help you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I saw the other day. I can't think of the guy's name, but he was talking about his own mental health and emotional state, and he was like, I became such a good swimmer that nobody knew I was drowning until I drowned. And he was
Yeah.
talking about his mental health. Like no one knows that I'm having issues because I had been such a good, happy, gleeful person that no one even thought to ask me,
Yeah.
was I anything else? And I think a lot of times we show that we're so good and we got it handled and we take care of it, and no one even thinks like, yo, he might be struggling.
Yeah.
And they never ask us. And that's why I say, like, it can still be a barrier, but let's just change the way it looks.
Yeah. And I think the harsh truth is that boys growing to men like I remember hearing the quote, remember reading the quote, and it's just resonating. Like boys become men when they realize that they have no value as a boy. There's only value as being a man,
Mm,
contributing, taking care of things. Girls intrinsically have value though. We want to protect and take care of girls because they are already valuable. But boys are propelled to manhood when they realize being a boy, there's absolutely no value in that. And I think that is a harsh and sad truth because,
mhm.
as men we had to feel that, right? You had to feel like I have no value unless I'm contributing. And
Yeah.
so then you take that and that's why we always want to contribute. That's why we always want to provide because that's how we show that we have value. We don't feel like we have value if we're complaining or we have an issue that we need help with, but we don't realize that that help that we are soliciting also gains value in friendship and community. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
so we miss the value of that. We miss the value of asking for help, you know? So,
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And I listen, you're gonna probably see that or hear that from me again. Like that was good. Yeah, that was good. Because I think it's really true. Like one, we don't have any processes from going to boyhood to manhood.
right,
Like we
right,
just
right.
what is it like your 18th birthday or something?
Right.
Or if your father wasn't in the house, it's whatever day your mom says, "Hey, you're gonna be the man of the house now." Like you know what I mean? We don't really have a process of nurturing a boy to a man, unless you have a present father in the household, and that happens kind of, but not really because a lot of times dad is going to show you how to be a man. He's not going to tell you, right? And so you have to interpret what that means. It's like, and I ask guys all the time, like, did your dad ever have a manhood conversation with you? I'm like, no, he showed me how to be a man. He took care of the house. He loved my wife. He loved my mom. He took care of me and my, yeah, but that, you don't know what that means.
Exactly.
Like, not
Exactly.
really. Um, so I think the onus kind of falls on us. Like we got daughters, obviously, so it's a little bit different, but even in that, it's like we have to teach them through our actions and our words what a man is, or else they may
Yes.
end up with boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Because a lot of, like I said, a lot of boys aren't being taught how to be men, and so at some point their ages are going to line up, and they're going to end up with either a boy or a man. And if we don't show them, tell them, teach them what a man looks like, then we're gonna have a lot of wet shoulders when they're crying, and
Yeah.
a lot of uncomfortable conversations with our daughter about some boy who broke her heart. And so it's a really interesting situation. But I don't know, other than doing what we're doing, having conversations about fatherhood, talking to young men who are just becoming fathers,
Yeah.
talking to young men who aren't fathers yet. Like this is why I kind of like working with teenage boys, is because without the knowledge of what it means to be a man, then you just become an adult boy, and the world doesn't benefit. Again, there's still no value
Right.
world with an adult boy, I guess you would say, like an adult male and not a man.
Yeah.
And I think it might be worse in our current environment because the world is almost telling you you should just be an adult boy
Yeah.
and not a man because for some reason man and toxic became synonymous
Yeah.
together. And so now as these boys are growing, that's what's being relayed to them.
Hmm. Yeah.
Where to your point, sure, they can keep relating that, but at the end of the day, the value there and the necessity that we of what we need from a man is not going to be there.
Right.
Right.
And
Right.
so to your other point about our daughters, sure, we have daughters, and I think it's important for us to talk through exactly what you said to our daughters so that they can also find that man when it comes time and they're looking for these things, not just the outer shell, right?
Right.
Just like you said, I can watch my pops do his thing, and he provided, and he made sure we had food on the table, and he worked himself to, half dead all the time, and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. But we never had that conversation, right? Like there was never that conversation of what's going on behind all of that, because I just see
Right.
this, right?
Right.
And now we're just living it, right? So now in these conversations, and this is why for me it's been so almost therapeutic to be here with Blandon and then to have our guests on, because we can talk through these things, and it just almost rewinds the reel for me back into one specific time in my life where I'm like, oh, I could have probably done this better. I could have done this better. Had I had that knowledge before, how much better would I be for my daughters?
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's something that let me see if I can make this analogy and see if it hits. And this might be good. It might be bad. You guys can delete it if you don't like it. So
We'll cut it.
my phone, right? And my phone, right? It is, I'm an Android guy. So if people see this, if you're judging me
Oh
already,
boy. Oh boy.
listen,
You
just
ride.
let
I
it
was
go, and let's just
on your side.
ride with
Okay.
let's
I'm
We're
gonna
just
gonna lo-
ride with
I'm
we're
gonna
gonna
ride
lose
with
all
you.
our listeners. They're all
okay,
gone.
let's just let's wait, okay? Just wait. So the phone, right, is it's glass, it's plastic, it's got all the little pieces on the inside, right? It has some value, right? But
Yeah.
if I take all of the software, all of the apps, the operating system, if I take that all that off, it's no longer as valuable. It's probably not even valuable anymore. Like if I told you you could have this phone with no apps, you'd be like, no, thank you, right?
Give me a
So
flip phone.
when right, so when you're an adult boy, you're just the phone, no software, no apps, no camera, nothing. The software is what makes this thing valuable,
Hmm.
right? When I talk about fathers showing us how they fathered, right, and just kind of being a father to us, they were giving us the hardware.
Yeah.
You gotta be this
Yeah.
size, you gotta have a
Yeah.
screen, it's gotta be a camera,
Yeah.
right? There's battery life in there, there's certain little gadgets and microchips that you have to have. But if they don't teach you the software, you kind of grow up with just the framework of what a father is, and you got to fill it all in yourself. And so you got old versions of apps that don't work, or you're trying to download the wrong things, and they don't give you the true value of what you could be. And then I think we do that, and we okay, I'm gonna try this and I'm gonna try that, and then we lock in on it. Like my dad was this way, and he treated us this way, and so we run with that. But it's an old version of software, and if we don't update our software, like we talked about earlier, being reflective, we don't look back at, okay, if I was a great father when my daughter was 3 but she's 9, I can no longer be that version of the father
Right.
because she's a 9-year-old. That 3-year-old dad is different. I've got to upgrade my software, and I've got to continue to upgrade my software if I want my phone to stay valuable. If I get a brand new iPhone and they have an operating system update and I don't update my phone, it's terrible. Like
Yeah.
it's just you know what I mean? Like, I don't have an iPhone. I've never had one. Well, I had one at one point for work. I didn't like it. I don't have it anymore.
Oh my
But but
gosh.
but but
Jeez.
but 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 you guys get what I'm saying, though, right?
I
Like
get what
if
you're
you don't,
saying. I get what
once
you're
the
saying.
upgrade comes up and you don't upgrade, you're like a dinosaur, right?
Right, right. You're dead in the water. You're dead in the water.
Yeah. So for us, we for those of us that had a father that was present, he gave you the hardware. It's up to you, and he probably should have shared it with you, but that is what it is, right? It's up to you to keep your software updated. It's up to you to put the right apps on there. It's up to you to understand the needs of the user, which is your family, your wife, your
Yeah.
kids. They are using that phone, and if you don't have the right apps on there at the right time, then they're going to go find it somewhere else.
Yeah. That reminds me of this story that I heard, and I was like, "Man, this is exactly this fatherhood conversation." And it was this little boy asked his dad. It was Christmas time, and the dad just put 3 logs in the fireplace. And the little boy's like, "Dad, why are you only putting 3 logs in the fireplace? You know, fireplace is huge. It's gonna burn. Those 3 logs are gonna burn out." And he's like, "Well, that's what my dad did. He only put 3 logs in the fireplace." And so then the little boy asked the grandfather, like, "Why did you only put like 3 logs in the fireplace?" And he's like, "Well, that's what my dad did, you know." And so then they finally get to the great grandfather who's still alive, and they ask him, "Hey, Pops, why did you only put 3 logs in the fireplace?" And he was like, "Well, we didn't have a big fireplace back then. It could only hold 3 logs,
Right.
you know?" And
Right.
so that's why we only put 3 logs in there. But that's the same thing. We're doing the same thing that fathers are doing or other men that we saw in our lives without an explanation on why they did it. They only
Exactly.
did that because of what they had. We
Yeah.
have more, the capacity changes. So if we keep doing the same thing without an understanding behind it, without an understanding of manhood, we're going to be trapped in this cycle. And so what we're talking about is that perfect example. We need to have more of these conversations, like you both are saying, with young men and with our daughters, obviously, so they
Mhm.
know what to look for, so they can weed out, and I hate to say it, but the undesirables for them. I'm not saying these young boys are just undesirable in general, but they might be undesirable for our daughters and how they're
Right.
wired and how they were raised and their
Right.
needs and wants and dreams in life.
Mhm. I agree with you. I agree with you, and I think that is exactly what's happening, right? Without that conversation of the reason why it's three logs, it just continues to get perpetuated, just over and over again. This is the way we do things,
Right.
right?
It's antiquated. Yeah, it becomes very, very old, but our environment is not. Our environment is
Right.
constantly renewing itself. So, um, and I was listening to your latest podcast, Rod, and with the certified counselor, and he was talking about that exact thing where, we revert, or maybe you had mentioned it. We revert back to what we know, whatever you were told or however you were told it or what have you. You revert back to that, and it's kind of our easy, like, safe zone. But
Mhm.
just like you mentioned, that was a different time.
Yeah.
I look back at when I got in trouble for things. Like, if there had been phones with cameras when I was growing up, we'd be having a whole different conversation. Maybe not even a
Right.
conversation at all.
Right.
You see what I mean? So the way that I was brought up and disciplined, let's say, it has to evolve because it's a
Right.
much different time.
Yeah. The guy you're talking about is Kyle Wester.
Thank you.
Um, but yeah, so you hear it a lot in like sports and in like training. It's like you don't elevate to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like everybody expects to win the championship,
Oh
but
yeah.
the teams that win the championship are the teams that prepare themselves to win championships,
Yeah.
right? And the same thing happens in every field, right? Like whatever level of training you have is what you're going to fall back to. Like miracles happen for sure. Like
Sure.
lightning strikes, and you might, you know what I mean? You might fall into a windfall, but more often than not, you're going to end up right where you've prepared yourself for.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've joked about this before, right? You have that you we all have that friend that's like, if I had to, I'd fight. Really?
Yeah.
Have you ever, like, because it's so true. You just said it. You're gonna fall back to your highest level of training. And if it's zero,
Right.
good
Yeah,
luck.
You're right.
Right?
Right. You're running.
Exactly.
Get out of
So
there.
but it's for me, it's a very usable analogy because I can fall back to how I was disciplined and raised, the way that I was brought up. I can fall back to that, but it doesn't move the needle forward with my daughters. I don't think. I think it'll move the needle, but it doesn't necessarily move it forward.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, I think my parents did the best that they could with what they had and the resources that were given to them.
Right.
And the level of understanding of parenthood or whatever, like the culture was or society
Yeah.
was at that time. I think they did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Um, but there are still things that they did, and I'm like, I'm never gonna do that with my kids.
Yeah.
Like it's just never gonna happen. And if I don't progress and learn and grow as a parent, what's gonna happen when I get frustrated is I'm gonna fall right back into what they did.
For
Like
sure.
I've literally heard myself say words and like had a flashback, like, oh my God, sound just like my dad. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
We
oh
all
my
have.
God.
We all have,
Listen,
man.
I am
That's
I
that's
am
the
not one of your little friends. I remember the
exact
first time I said that to my daughter, and I was like, oh, how old am I? Jesus Christ. And then I, but I had enough awareness of who I wanted to be and who I should have been in that moment, to catch it and be like, "Oh, I didn't want to say that. I didn't mean that. I'm
Yeah.
not one of your little friends. But what I meant to say was,
Yeah, right. It might be worse when your wife tells you that. My wife's done that before. We'll finish something, she's
yeah,
like, "You sounded just like your mom." I'm like, "Oh, dang, like, I didn't even catch that." You know what I mean? Because not that my mom's all bad, but those little instances where you're like, "Yeah,
yeah,
that's not what I wanted to that was not the road I wanted to take in that conversation whatsoever."
Right.
Uh, and then she'll do it with a little, like, look, which doesn't really help, but she's right, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why we got to keep training. We got to keep getting better and keep
That's
working
right.
on ourselves. Um, and I say this all the time to guys I work with, and really to anybody that'll listen. Is as much as I am about family and about fatherhood, I am also about me. And if I don't take care of me, then I don't get to be a good father or a good husband. Right. And I think a lot of guys, I think you might have mentioned earlier, when we get into fatherhood and husbandry and all these things, we're really sacrificial.
Yes.
And, and and I think when you talked about it earlier, we were a little more talking about in the religious sense of it, but we will sacrifice ourselves to give to our family. But what really happens is we end up giving them so much less of what we could be,
Right,
Yeah.
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I'm burning the candle at both ends, right? I'm working, because I have to provide, but then when I come home, I'm so tired I can't be present.
Yeah,
And so while I'm, we got a nice house and we got all the things that we want, they don't have me.
yeah,
Because I'm not physically able to do the things that I want to do. Like my kids want to go outside and play, and I'm not in the shape to go play.
right.
Or I can. We go to the park, and I'm gonna push you a few times, but Daddy's got to go sit down. Like you got to go figure it out on your own.
Yeah,
And maybe that's good because you learned how to swing, but but I would much rather be playing with you and chase you up the slide. You know what I mean? But I can't because I'm not taking care of me. And I
yeah.
think that happens a whole lot more than we like to admit. And we pat ourselves on the back for it. We wear it as a badge of honor, is that we're sacrificing ourselves for our children. But the reality is you're sacrificing the relationship with your children too,
Yep.
because there is an opportunity for so much more if you can give them all of you as well.
Well, and you're also by doing that, you're also teaching them that it's not important to take care of themselves.
Mhm.
That's such a crucial thing that you said it right now, and I can tell you 100%. Blandon could probably back me up on this. These last few weeks for me have been insanely busy, and before I would easily pat myself on the back to say, "Oh, I gave it all at work, and then I came home and gave my family the rest of it. I didn't work out, but it's okay. It's just for them." But now I'm at the point where if I'm not taking care of myself, I can see myself not being the father that I want to be, the
Right.
Yeah.
husband that I want to be, which which I'm not saying it's more important, but it feels many times like it is extremely important for me to first and foremost be a better husband so that my daughters are seeing that. Uh, and then and then through that be a good father to them. And so when I don't get a workout and my wife will just be like, you know what? Just go get a workout in. Like she'll just tell me. And
Yeah.
I appreciate her so much for that because there's times where I'm in that mindset of, well, I can't. Like I didn't work out in the morning for whatever reason. I work, now I want to be with the girls, but she'll tell me, she'll say, yeah, but you're sucking at being with the girls right now because you're not here, right? And sure enough, I'll go get a 30-minute workout in, come back, and I'm a whole different person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's very for me. I think in my lifestyle, it's very apparent to me when I am not taking care of myself because I feel it with my kids,
Mhm.
right? But to your point, it's easy to almost not just pat ourselves on the back, but use it as a crutch. To like, no, I didn't work out because I'm going to be with my kids.
Right. Right.
Almost like it's their fault, right?
Right.
And it's not. And we've joked about this before about blaming like the kids when I'm gone. Like, oh, well, why are you gone? Well, don't you like your toys? Like, it's not their fault, right?
Right.
But it's easy. It's so easy to creep over to that line and say, well, I'm doing this for you, so technically it's because of you. And that's not.
Right.
At least that's not how I feel about it.
Right. No, I agree with you. We've joked about it, and we both agree that it's a little whack if you have to blame your kids for, "Hey, do you like to eat?" It's like, okay, come on now,
Yeah.
please, you
But
know.
you know we've
Let's
all done it. You're
Yeah.
we have
tired.
oh no,
You're
I have. I know I have. I know I've definitely
your
done it.
brain's tired. Your kids asking you why this, why that, and then you're just like, that's how you finish the conversation.
Yeah,
Or like I've been gone a lot, so my youngest will be like, well, why do you have to go? I'm like, well, I can't not buy you the dolls, and I need to come to work to buy you the dolls. And then
Right.
I'll stop.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's not her fault. Like, she didn't
right,
make me go do this, right? I mean, let's face it,
right.
she didn't even choose to be here, right? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's not how it works. But no, again, the way that you work this, you start with faith. You put fitness in there because it's just such a crucial, just a and it's such an important part of not just like being good for that day, but man, I follow you all the way through that vision of like being 50 and not being able to go play with the kids, being, 40. I've seen some 40-year-olds that are
Oh yeah,
not having it. I'm like, dude, like you can have a heart attack. Like you could be
yeah.
gone in an instant. So no, for sure, that whole thing. But I did want to ask you, you coach fathers across the board. We, I say specialize in daughters because that's what our platform is. We're here as daughtered fathers. But we do we have conversations with all fathers. In fact, as we started this, I I just find myself talking to whoever has kids, and we're just talking through some of these things. And but it is easier for me, at least, when they're like, oh yeah, I have daughters. I'm like, I have daughters too, let's talk, right? So we'll start having these conversations. And it may be easier because they're strangers. It may be easier because I'm like, I won't see this dude ever again. Like, what if I
Right.
say whatever, right? What would you say is like your biggest takeaway from everything that you've been doing? So as you've been coaching, because you're getting something back inevitably from them, you're getting something back. So what is your biggest takeaway as you're coaching these fathers through the four pillars, through maybe just one pillar because they were focused on one specific thing? What is your biggest takeaway for you so far in the work that you've been doing?
There's a couple things. Um, I know that a lot of guys that I work with, not all, but a good number of guys that I work with didn't get to experience sonship. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is that everyone, no matter who you are, at some point in your life have to be fathered. That father doesn't have to be biological. It doesn't even have to be a father. It just has to be someone who can guide and lead you in a way that helps you go through the process of becoming, right? A football coach fathers you. A pastor might
Yeah,
father you. And you could have your father still around, right? But a father figure like that helps you. He's like an assistant coach to your dad. You know what I mean? So I get a lot of fulfillment for kind of filling that role. I just love being a father. Let me just say that, right? Like I said, when I found out I was going to be a father, I knew that I found my purpose, and so I father my daughters all out. But then I also get the opportunity to, in those situations where I'm working with guys, I don't want to say their father. It's a really weird. It feels weird to say it that way, but to help like guide and mentor and lead.
yeah,
And obviously, it's not the same as I do with my daughters because these are adult men. But that is exciting for me. It's fun. It's fulfilling. Like it gives me a different kind of joy than like just talking to some guy on the street about it. You
right.
know what I mean? Um, the other thing is, and honestly, like like I said, I worked with the Mets for a little bit, and that's cool up at the top level of working with professional athletes, but you're really just kind of babysitting because they've already achieved everything that they need to achieve, right?
Right.
Like they're gonna get like a 0.5% better because of me. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Um, and the reason that I work with youth athletes today is because there's a process. Like I've had the beautiful privilege of having an 8-year-old and working with him until he was drafted. Like to
Oh
be a
wow.
part of that process, the progress and see that growth. And I'm playing a very small part in it, but that growth and that process is like everything for me, right? So that's one part of it. the other part, and I've said this before, and if guys have heard me talk about it, it's funny, but it's also serious. Is that if I don't help other fathers be better fathers, then their children grow up in a world that my children grow up in.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my daughters have to go out into a world with other, not children now, I guess they're going to be adults at that point, but they haven't been fathered
Yeah.
properly, quote unquote. And so now my kids have to live in, after all the hard work that I've done being their father, now I send them out into the world and they got to deal with other people who weren't fathered in a
Yeah.
similar fashion, or at least, like, not that my way is right. Like, everybody's going to father their children in different ways because your scenarios and situations are different, but like with the same kind of value and principles and like the ideas of the importance of fatherhood. Like, if I don't do my part outside of fathering my children, but if I do my part in my community, in my neighborhood, in my city, my state, and social media now, of trying to help other men be better men, then my kids have to go live in the world with their kids. And I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I can't predict it. Yeah, I can't control it, but I'd rather try to put my kids in the best possible position. So I'm doing that in my house, but then I understand I have to do it outside my house. And so, you know, business aside, it's just trying to help the world be a better place, to be completely honest. And that sounds
Yeah.
like a pipe dream, you know what I mean? Like, wishing for world peace, or
Yeah.
like no one's gonna be hungry when I grow up, kind of
Right.
thing, but this is the only way that I've found that I can do that, right? Like on a bigger scale than just like my circle of friends. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what's in it for me.
That's awesome. I think in that we definitely assimilate to that because that's, I like that you are influencing, your daughter, but now you're influencing young men out there as well. And those are the young men, as you mentioned, that will meet your daughters at some point or may meet your daughters at some point. But aside from that, you are mentoring bigger than just your circle. And I know when Bland and I started doing daughter podcast, that was kind of it. Like, hey, how do we reach out? How do we create, just put a little bit of good into the world somewhere, right? Just a little
Mhm.
bit. And I think you said it very eloquently and precisely. And then that is that you have a responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you hit on something like really tremendous, which is that the realization that a lot of men aren't used to being fathered, that they didn't get through the sonship process. They just kind of went immediately into being someone else's father.
Hmm.
And I know that was my experience. My father was not a part of my life, even though him and my mother were married for almost 20 years. Um, After they divorced, it was just like, he went and began fathering someone else's children. And then I was kind of left to pick up the pieces. And so then going in and then becoming a man myself, having to kind of figure out what that looked like. And then a Christian man having to figure out what that looked like. I felt like I was behind the curve. So I can understand that issue of not feeling fathered, right? You don't know what accountability looks like. You don't know when someone is really trying to help and coach you and counsel you through something. You might think they're just trying to be nosy and get in your business and this, that, and the other. Um, and then one other important thing that boys need is they need someone else who has matured to call out the man in them and call them higher, than what they're currently doing. And so I think that's tremendous and really important for you to do with fathers, to like say, hey, you are no longer thinking of yourself. Now I'm calling the father out of you. And
Right.
that's what you're really doing, is calling them higher to a higher calling, which is outside themselves. Outside, of course, taking care of themselves is important for that, but now you have to think, you know, of this other person, this other life, this other soul that is in the world now,
Mhm.
and that is more important than you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think when we talk about sonship, I think sonship gives you the space to mature. And a lot of us miss that. we just kind of become a man. We don't get the opportunity to mature into a man. And then we're given these responsibilities or these titles. Like we find a girl and we fall in love, and then we propose, and now we're married, and now we're a husband.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's
Yep.
like,
Right.
okay, all right, cool. Now I'm responsible for you. Like, yeah, all right.
Right.
I don't know what that's like, but let's do it.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of us, very shortly after, or if not sometime in the mix, we become
Right.
fathers.
Yeah.
And we're taking the two biggest transitions in a man's life, and we're pushing them together. And
Yeah.
we're like, all right,
Yeah.
let's hope this works. And it's these huge transitions in men's lives is where we see the most trauma, where we see the most problems. Like we talk about marriages, for example, we know marriages in this country aren't super successful. But if you think about most marriages, that within the first year, you move in together. It's the first time you're splitting finances. It's a tough
Yeah.
time. You're learning more about this person because you've been dating their representative. Now you're really actually learning who they are. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Like you're really figuring out who they are. And this is in the first year. And then, within 9 months, you got a kid. And having kids is difficult.
Yeah.
So, like, marriage is not necessarily in those first few years very, like, we're honeymooners. Not really. Not really. It's,
Right.
it's, it's like one of the toughest times in a guy's life. And if you haven't had the opportunity to mature leading up to that, you are definitely sledding uphill, like, no doubt.
Yeah.
And those two things are probably the two of the heaviest things that any man is going to encounter. So they push you down, and guys just struggle. And if we're lucky enough to struggle through it, we hope that things get better on the other side, but that's not always the case. And
Yeah.
so that's why it's really important for me, especially when I'm working with younger guys. It's like, hey, look, listen, it's going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of really tough situations, and we're going to prepare for that. But the best way for us to prepare for it is to be appreciative of all the good moments, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that we talk about a lot is having, like, kind of that attitude of gratitude, because we know there's going to be downs, but in those downs, what are the positives we could look at?
Right.
Like, I didn't get to sleep last night. The baby was up crying all night. I had worked overtime too, so I really needed sleep. Now I got to get up at 5 a.m. and I just changed the diaper at 4:35. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to do this. It's hard. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard. Like, look, my friend, he got to, him and his lady ain't together no more, so he don't even live with the baby. He slept good last night.
Right.
Like that, it started looking good to you. Like, oh man, like, oh, well, he had a good life. But that's not the case, man. Nobody really wants that. Like, I can almost guarantee that all of when I'm talking to young guys that are listening, all of your single friends don't want to be single. Like,
Yeah.
just trust me. Like,
Right.
all of the fun it seems like they're having, well, it's ugly out there right now, man. The dating world is ugly. You don't want that.
Oof.
You
Oof.
you don't want that.
Oof.
Fight through it, my man. Fight through
Right.
it. Uh,
Well, Rod, man, we can't tell you how much we. Hey, Rod, man, tell us where we can find you in the social media side of the house.
Yeah, so it's easiest and probably where I'm most active is on Instagram. So you can find me at Forfeit Fatherhood, the number four. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me on Instagram. And believe it or not, I am still the one to answer all of the messages. I still comment. I still, there are more messages now, so it takes me a little longer than they used to. But I will get back to you. I will answer your question. If you want to get a little bit, if you it's a little urgent, a little more urgent, you probably reach me through email. Again, for Fit Fatherhood, the number four, fitfatherhood at gmail.com. Those are the two best ways to get in touch with me if you want to reach out. And then once you do, we can wrap it up and kind of figure out if we want to get, into deeper conversation. I can give you some other ways.
All right. And is that how is that the process to get to the coaching as well?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the easiest way.
Very good. Blandon, you got anything else for Rod and for our listeners?
Yeah, man. I just wanted to thank Rod for coming on here, sharing those gems of wisdom, the encouragement to just keep going, and knowing that we're having this conversation like other dads, other girl dads are having these conversations. They're out in the world, they're helping other men like truly reach their potential. in life, in husbandry, in fatherhood, and that we even have a community amongst the people who are developing communities. So I think that's an amazing thing. Rod, you let me know what pop you're looking for next. I'll be on the lookout for you. I'll hunt it for you, man, and then I'll send it your way. Okay.
Oh
But yeah,
man. Okay, we'll do. We'll
thank you
do.
for
Well,
coming
you know
on.
what? Yeah, there's one that I was looking for. Actually, is Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi
I've been looking
Hendrix.
for.
No, bro, that's vaulted. That's vaulted, bro. So okay.
Uh,
Okay.
okay. All right. That
All
is, it
right.
means it's
We'll
just gonna be
see.
harder for me
We'll
to
see.
get, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
looking for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If I run across it, I'll let you know.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Well, Rod, again, can't thank you enough for your time, for the wisdom you brought in. Greatly appreciate you. For everyone out there, as far as us, the Daughter Podcast, send anything you have to conversations@daughterpodcast.com. You can go to www.daughterpodcast.com and you can find all the episodes, all of the platforms where the episodes are published, as well as all of our social media on there. I'm Oscar here on the not so much regular side, but traveling. Blandon over in Houston and Rod over in California. See you guys on the next one.